Hi, Annie. How you doing?
Hey, hi Paul. How are you?
Thanks for joining. I absolutely love it.
My
So,
pleasure.
Annie Andragna, we've done a show before. You were actually one of my earlier guests, and then I jumped on your show, Our
Hmm.
Luminous Life, or just Annie Andragna,
Hmm.
and just that co-creation, the exchange. I truly appreciate what you're doing. I love your Instagram. You're really good at, I call it the talking head or the monologue, but I do have a little jealousy of you. You're very good at that and delivering the
Thank
message, and
you.
and how I receive really your overall messaging and your presence on is you're part of that growth path, the expansion. There's a sense of self mastery that we all are on, and I really believe you have a good message built around a lot of
Thank
that.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you, Paul. I'm excited to be here. And I'm just going to admit it now. Your podcast was the first podcast I had ever been on.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
And
gosh.
so
That's awesome.
it's really fun to be back and to share some more insights. And thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me
Absolutely.
back.
I was the Gateway podcast. Now you're hooked. Now you're
Yeah. I love it.
and you have your show,
Yeah.
which is phenomenal. And what's cool before we get into it too, I was just going to say what's cool about if anybody is going to start a podcast or really get into this world or become guests, it's really is fun to have good partners and good people that you again co-create with and exchange ideas. Even if you don't talk or connect that often, it's nice to know that there's other people out there just sharing in that experience. So there's a sense of support and the underlying aspect of energy with it too. So
A
it's
hundred
cool.
percent. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to have people in your corner and it's good to have people that just get the challenges that you yourself are also facing, or
Yeah.
maybe have a different skill set that you don't have. You can ask
Hmm.
each other questions and fill in the gaps because there's not like a whole crew working behind scenes for most of
Yeah.
us. It's
Yeah, it
all
is.
us.
No, it is. And again, too, is I do like this intro. I love the meta candid aspect of what we're talking about here as we jump into the deeper stuff. But yeah, there's waypoints that people you can exchange with people, but there's no rule book. There's no paint by numbers with any of this stuff because some of it is you're figuring it out yourself. And there's a sense of growth and healing and everything that goes along with just the communication and kind of providing this to the world as a whole or whomever hears it. And,
Yeah. It's like a
yeah,
metaphor for life.
it is. So some of the things too is as far as like with you today,
Yeah.
where I wanted to start is, and what's great about talking to you too is we'll end up where we end up is wherever we end up. But I think with you was talking about senses of fulfillment, those paths to success and how those highest and best actions and processes that we build or the limitations we put in our places that hold us back a little bit in that arena. And I know you kind of work in this area quite a bit. So I'm not going to start with a question. I actually just want to open it up to you to share a little bit,
I
if
love
that's fair.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that's a perfectly appropriate way to start. I When you and I started discussing what it is that we would dig into, because there's a lot, but one of the things that has gotten me into podcasting and content creation and this next phase of my life as far as like a coach and all of that mentor is from my own story of not feeling as fulfilled as I should. And in many ways, it manifested as anxiety, manifested as trying to control every freaking thing in my life. And I was a crazy person. I felt crazy. I wasn't crazy. It was really me hearing signs that I wasn't listening to myself. And so the thing I think that was the toughest for me is that I should have been, from outside expectations, I should have been fulfilled. I should have been happy with my career, and even prior to the relationship, the personal, like my marriage now, I should have been happy in my former relationships, and I wasn't. And so I think it drug me through the mud emotionally. It was like I don't even know how to say it. It was almost like my own personal like gaslighting and abuse to
Sure.
myself that, Annie, shouldn't you be happy? Shouldn't you be fulfilled? And that's what kind of kept me going for so long in the
Mm,
unhappy state is that I wasn't willing to admit that it just wasn't good enough for me.
sure.
And so, yeah, so I think that we all have our own journeys, but I started recognizing that I could be fulfilled and still make a really great living and just blow up everything that I knew
Yeah.
and still land on my feet. And I think that there's so much more to it than just that, but that's like the starting point of why I feel so passionate about fulfillment. I love helping alchemize our lives of struggle and disappointment and lack of fulfillment into a fulfilling, successful, abundant life.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, there's as a starting point too, it's that other. I think that we do beat ourselves up, your own worst enemy in a sense, if I may change the words a little bit there. And I've often with myself too has felt that tormented soul. There's an incongruency. I think there's the what was coming to me too when you were talking about that. I was thinking about it. I'm like, there's the requirements of the day. Um,
Mhm.
the resources of our lives of money and food and shelter that we provide to our family and the required actions out of dutiful mother or dutiful father or dutiful spouse and those requirements play we lay more pressure on ourselves so we build up these worlds that whether real or imagined they're real to us so many of the things are imagined we are very creative creatures we can think of all sorts of things that are going to happen and go wrong and we
Yeah.
imagine and fantasize about the things that will go right and then this either the doubt sets in and we go in these courses and we like you said the word crazy I think we
Yeah,
all feel that way and definitely if not entirety in certain aspects of our lives like love and money and career and family and friends and communication and
totally.
yeah and we set out this too and it's I think it's not about defining anything either I think there's a sense of coming back to the word like fulfillment
Mm,
I think that there's to live a fulfilled life is to be, I think some of it could be a contributor. You want to feel like you're and just making progress in some way,
mhm.
shape, or form. It's not necessarily, it's not always the destination, it's the journey and all those cliches. And some of them are really annoying when you hear it because I just want this. And you're like, it's just the journey. And I'm like, I'm not enjoying the journey. I want this little thing over here, this little shiny little thing. Give me it now. We get all the expectations out. So we go after it. And that's, there's nothing wrong with it either. So I think that there's giving the permission slip, not beating up on ourselves, but easier said than done,
Yeah.
depending on the weight of it too. There's a lot of weight. And like I said too, when you get into the survival or the resources or other requirements of the day, there's feel life or death. They feel bigger and magnified.
Yeah. No, you're spot on. And I would say that so many of us, a lot of us that are take it for what it's worth. I had been researching this particular phenomenon of being a high performer in my career, responsible for a lot of livelihoods, a lot of money, that type of thing. And knowing that my skills are useful in other ways, and also feeling really defeated that my creativity, I didn't feel as though I was able to use my creativity to the capacity that made me feel good. And so I think that sort of is one sort of point to note. And then also is that it's like you feel trapped, right, in
Yeah,
what
sure.
you're doing. So for me, for example, I, for a short period of time, was a single mom. And everyone thinks, "Oh, woe is me, single mom." Like I bought a house for my son and I drove a nice car. I bought things at Pottery Barn for his bedroom. Like I was able to financially contribute to our lives to be very curated and bespoke this and look going to the salon and the spa. And so I was able to like provide things
Mm-hmm.
and even experiences that really were a lot of fun for all of us. We traveled to Mexico, I mean, so there's all that stuff. And I still found myself not fulfilled. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that I needed to have these moments of personally, I needed to have these moments of like panic attacks before going in. For me, I had some anger outbursts that didn't feel like myself. I almost felt like I
Sure.
was like hovering over myself, like out of body experience. I found myself in another romantic relationship that was not good for me. It was very controlling, not, and it's you almost hover over yourself and you think, this is not what it's all about.
Right.
And so I think that I've always known that I have the ability to provide for my family. That's a different level of security. But I would say that I had to experience the pains that sort of came with it. And it also manifests. And so there's going to be things where it manifests into physical problems. I had migraines. I had So we were talking about this just before our conversation is I got several styes in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I spoke with a woman who was part of the complete change in direction of my entire life. Her name was Jackie. She was known as like the angel whisperer. She's 87.
Mm-hmm.
She's since passed. She lived in kind of the south suburbs of Chicago. And she talked about something to do with my eyes. And it was interesting. And I was like, nothing had ever happened. Sure enough, shortly thereafter, I started having just a lot of eye infections, which never
Interesting.
happened to me before.
Right.
And it was like these things that were manifesting because I was living out of alignment that was not fulfilling for me, even though everyone around me was like, wow, she should be great. Everything should be fine. She's got the
Right.
job, she's got the house, she's got the car, she travels, she can do whatever. And it's so you lie to yourself and say, I should just be happy with this. And you
Yeah.
lie to yourself and you think, there's nothing else I could do. There's nothing better. I have to keep doing this, or else it's like your nervous system thinks you're going to die.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, you're living in it. You embody it so much, but I do touch on a couple different things too. Is that one is the expression of where it lands. Things like you think globally or something with a heart disease.
Yeah.
It's like a broken heart. It's just I know it might sound silly to somebody, but it's not. That's where these things are expressing themselves, or people have if there's an expression of you don't feel like you can speak. There's times where you feel like your throat is just closed in small ways. Those little things express yourself where you start to be able to read your body.
Yeah.
And there's things too, is like you were talking about, and I'm going to use it just personally too, is that you're doing things like I'm going through the days and working and then doing the right stuff and working around the house and getting the groceries, whatever. You do the stuff and you live this life that you're, again, I'm going to call it the dutiful, the out of responsibility, the program.
Programmed. Yeah.
And you start to live the lie deep down. You're not there. Like I'm not, it's almost like I'm not present. So I'm not present with my boys and my wife. I'm not present. I'm there, but I'm not really there. I'm too busy living the program of the actions of the program, but deep down I know that this is so incongruent with
There's more
who
to
I
this
am.
life. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
more to
there's
this
more to
life
this life. This
than the
isn't
actions.
yeah. So and you create these strong desire points. And now sometimes I think I use the word waypoint. There are waypoints. You see these things that maybe in your mind, those, if you were to be there, that would be externally, I would be happy if I were there.
Mm.
And if you're not happy here now, you're not necessarily going to be happy over there either. So there is a process to the journey and the self mastery and the search and the seeking and the learning and the
Right.
growth and along those ways. But I think you really touched on some deep stuff there where we all, not we all, I shouldn't never generalize, but I think that many people find themselves in these programs that they've had for decades as adults, and they were passed on from their parents, friends, schools, everything else, all the
Mhm.
influences of the societal, this is how you should structure your life and this is what you should do. And you abide by that thinking that, oh, if I do that, if I play in the rules, will take care of me. And in the end, you find that this is not heart centric. I'm not in my heart space. I'm not living the freedoms I want, the creativities I want, the inspirations and the things that light me up. I'm doing the things of the today in this world, and they own me. That's the big thing too, is that you get to this point where it hurts so bad because those things own you. And they own your time. So that gets to be very frustrating. And you have these lashes out. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. I'll end right after this. But then all
No,
of a
it's
sudden you
so
find yourself in
good.
such deep anger that you're having these out of body anger experiences and you're like, this doesn't even feel like me. Maybe I don't even know if this is me, but I'm just lost with resentment. And then if it's misdirected, either you start resenting yourself and then that expresses it way, or you resent the people in your life. Somehow they got you.
Totally.
They took me off my course. So it starts to get redirected when it's you can't process it here. You start externalizing it. The more the fear, the more the pain it comes in here, the more you start to externalize, boohoo me, I'm the victim and everything else. That's a harsh way of
100%.
looking at it. But yeah.
100%. No, this is all like you being able to just easily break into that conversation, speaking, like literally speaking right now. It
Yeah.
shows that this is common and that this is something that so many of us who are providers, parents, and people of my parents were of the baby boomer generation, and maybe yours were too. I think that so many of us are trying to be good boys and girls. And I know that you had Dr. Rick Diamond on your podcast as well,
Yeah.
and he was on
Yeah.
mine, and he talks about that. And it sits really well with me. And it is a part of this whole thing, the people pleaser, the being a good boy or a good girl, the being a good mom or dad,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
being a great representation. But one of the sort of lighthouse things or the guideposts, as you were talking about, for me is I don't want my sons to be people pleasers. I don't want them to see their mother as someone who is angry and happy, and to think for even a second that it has to do with them. And I
Yeah.
don't even
Good
want
point.
them to think for a second that they have to live the life of, I just got to grind it through and be unfulfilled just to put food on the plate.
Right.
I want them to see that you can follow your joy, you can follow your happiness, you can explore things that light you up or that allow you to feel that like intoxicating flow.
Hmm.
And that will bring you to something that provides for you.
Yeah.
And
And and that
so,
touches into even what you said about having skill sets. You didn't say exactly this, but there was transferable skill sets of being in a certain, let's say, career
industry, yeah.
vocation
Mhm.
and being able to take those the talent stacking or the skill sets and reapply it or redirect it and into an arena that lights you up and that can take care of you in this different light or in this different energy.
Yeah. Yeah, my sons, they're both very vibrant young boys, and I they're going to learn soon enough that life is not always easy, and but that's okay. That's part of the refinement of
Mm.
who we are as humans and these lessons in life. But going back to some of the struggles for me that it took in order for me to say I'm just not happy, I'm not fulfilled,
Sure.
and I these this cage that I have around me, or this gold, there's a metaphor that's sometimes used, the golden cage of success, is that it's imagined, as you had said earlier. It's an imagined thing that I have to stay doing this thing just because I can do it well doesn't mean that it's what I am meant to do.
Hmm.
And this is me now at 47 years old saying, I'm trying new things and I'm doing new stuff. And I feel so excited by it. I've had people come to me and say, "You look younger. What is it?" I've had people that come up to me and say, "What's your secret?" And sure, I take care of myself. I eat well, but I also have incorporated so many things that have allowed me to tap into the voice inside me and take action and do, like, I'm putting my
Yep.
butt in the seat where my heart wants to be.
Yeah. And those are those things where you feel progress. You're contributing. And you see that and you feel it and it's tangible. Those senses of fulfillment start to glow in that heart space.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I wanna say this, I still am one of those people that I'm always thinking about the future. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's not I'm not
Well,
a Zen Buddha lady all the
yeah.
time. I still have a lot of forward goals. I have things that I want to achieve, and I'm present in the moment a lot more than I used to be. And I'm
Yeah.
satisfied. I'm a genuinely satisfied, happy person.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. And I don't think any of us have it all figured out by any means. There's certain senses of, and I say the thing of the journey of the self mastery.
Yeah.
And I think it's because it's just the journey. And there are things that we achieve at a level that we want, that we feel satisfied with. And then we try something else and a new flavor, a new taste, a new fit. And we continue to explore and have those adventures and stuff. And those are those spaces that where the life can be fun. And I guess I'll ask this question, or maybe it's a statement, either way, however you take it, is I've also noticed things on the path that once I do start making those progresses, that old life doesn't want to let go of me necessarily. So there's that kind of that grab on the ankle or something, or some other, metaphor analogy for that. But there's a little bit of that tug of the reverse. And I guess I'll just say this as a statement and let you just go with it. But I was going to say there's those things, this thought process of the pendulums, where there's so much energy within it that it is going to take some time to shift that, or the large ship where it takes time to turn. Again, the analogies, metaphors, allegories, and everything else that can go with it, ways to visualize it. But there are those energies that they don't necessarily want to let us go, and or we're still responsible for, and it takes time to. But you can find peace in there, I think, is where I was going to go with it too.
Yeah. Can I tell a story? Is it
Please,
okay?
just yeah,
So I would say that it absolutely takes time to detach from the old version of ourself, the unfulfilled, even though it's an unfulfilled version. And so I had a career in the fitness industry for 14 years. I had a specific title that was it was a part of my identity.
sure,
And
sure,
so it was one of those things where you go to I don't go to a whole lot of parties, but if you go to a gathering, people would ask me about this or that, or I would see members, or I would see people that once worked at the place that I was the leader of. Okay.
Mhm.
And this was for many years. I still go. Like when I went and got my new glasses, the lady remembers me from being this particular title.
Sure,
And it was a part of my identity that
hmm,
really was who Annie is. But I finally had these moments. I had many things that kind of brought me there, but I had these moments where it was clarity that kind of came through because of some frustration. And so I had decided that my goal was to transition away from that particular role. I had the support of my amazing husband, and timing wise, I had a boss that was very supportive of what growth pattern I had expressed to him. And so I moved out of that particular role. That
hmm,
said, I still found myself like trying to explain who I was by way of the title that I once held. And it
sure,
felt really
absolutely.
weird in my body. Like it was strange because I've never actually vocalized this, is that I would feel it almost a level of that flushing you feel when you get
Mhm,
embarrassed. I would, when I was talking about this is what I used to do. And it was like I
mhm.
would feel this like tightness, and like my tummy would do one of those little
I
butterfly
know.
flips.
And
And then the
sometimes there's like a
hot,
metallic feeling or something,
yeah,
like a yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And it would be like a hot flash on my face. And all of a sudden I thought to myself, why am I still attaching myself to this? This is not, if someone wants to know about my skill set or what I've done or things like that, certainly I'll respond and answer. But I was trying to identify what it was. And it really was that my ego was still attached to it. My old sort of version of myself was still there, and it was the easy thing to do. And so I've had to practice, and I have a meditation practice. It's not negotiable for me anymore, and I've had to meditate on the lessons that have come from changing course. And I've had to express gratitude every day for the opportunities that have come forward because I stepped out of the old version and have taken steps towards the new version of who Annie is,
Mm.
not who Annie was. And so I think that like my gratitude for the old stuff is the lessons that have come forward from it. And knowing that we have the ability to reinvent ourselves as many times as we need for this particular time of our life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And taking those strengths and learning the lessons and then bringing them back home to those heart space. Those are some of the optimal scenarios. So that we
Yeah.
bring it back home, but we're stronger, more aware of that. So it's a new experience. We get to create something new and then try something different. That's
Yeah.
those iterations. Those are beautiful.
And then
And
trust
oh, go
builds
ahead.
in ourselves too. As we take these leaps away from old versions of ourselves, unfulfilled, unhappy versions of ourselves, and we try new things for me, like for example, starting a podcast. It was a totally new thing. I had no idea what I was doing. You were there for me,
Yeah.
so you were
Yeah.
very helpful. I've had other friends and we now have some shared friends, and finding a community that kind of sees your potential before you're able to really see it. Even if
Right.
you have those twinkles in your eye of, "Ooh, this seems fun." Just
Absolutely.
giving yourself the benefit of the doubt that like this little glimmer of excitement is a reason to try something in order to feel that level of fulfillment that you deserve.
Hmm. Absolutely. So I do want to jump back to the identity because the identity thing is a really interesting scenario because I think there's things that we identify with, we chase to identify with because there's a value set. We'll put a value set, and this is amazing, and vice president or director or whatever, just arbitrary in a sense. But it's funny because some of that stuff really is meaningless in a sense too.
It's totally
It's because
meaningless.
it's almost like it's almost made up. Power vacuums and power sets are just made up in a sense too. It's whoever's going to take ownership of the end backstop in certain things. And I don't want to get lost in that career aspect of that, but some of it really just comes down to who's really truly taking ownership. And that's the leader. And that's the person that people really look up to. And then there's the people, but I was going to say too, is identity sets are really interesting because it took me a long time to get through some of that stuff. Like I wasn't seeking the identity. I was almost like repulsed by it. I almost had a different reaction to it. I was always a owner operator, small business, and just that I'd be classed under like an entrepreneur or lone wolf or whatever you want to call it and stuff. But me almost had this like kind of visceral reaction to title or position and stuff like that. I didn't want it. It was a repulsion for me and stuff. Like it was almost like me giving up and stuff. And then I actually found myself in the last like number of years, I'm in a position right now. So I'm like, how the heck did this happen? Be careful what you wish for, but be careful
Yeah.
what you reject too, because that might actually become part of the
Yeah.
subset of your life.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting too, because I do a lot of networking events as well too. And there's one, I just do this thing where like you were talking about identifying with the title. I almost go the opposite in a sense where I'm like, somebody's like, what do you do? And I'll be like, I do a lot of things. And then I'll go be like, there's the things that we do, the people that we are, and the people we want to be. And I do this some little poetic response to it and stuff. And I'm like, what I do is this. What do I want to be? What do I want to exchange? And I did a little ethereal and stuff like that. I'm not saying I have anything figured
I
out.
love
That's just
that.
my game. And I jokingly said to you before we even started this too, because some of it is I don't want too much form around it. I think there's some of that there's a deep sense of rebellion in me personally. And I know a lot of people feel this way. There's like a rejection to the structural. Nobody really wants to be. I think that people want some structure, but they don't want to be told what to do. So there's this sense of exchange in there. And I jokingly said to you earlier, I was like, my kung fu has no form.
Yeah.
And I just say my creativity has no form. It's not, I don't want to be too fixed on something. But then if you're not careful, you can become a wandering idea and not planted or fixed. So there's a balance to all that. And I'm not saying my view of identity is right or wrong. It's just my take on it because you shared yours.
Yeah.
And I just find it very fascinating because people do put a lot of weight or meaning behind something when it's not that it's hollow, but it can be too. And then, or it's taking ownership and going the other way and rejecting it. And all of a sudden finding yourself in the ownership of it. I don't know, just playing with that idea.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're humans, right? So we do have egos. We do have things that we are attached to, and learning how to unattach ourselves from
Sure.
titles and things
Yeah.
and labels and all that stuff, I think is all part of our life. And you meet older people that are near the end of their life on this earth, and there's very few people at the end of their life that wish that they had held on to a certain title longer, or they're really about experiences and lessons and life and love and what made them happy. At the end of my father's life, he had said, I didn't follow all of he wanted to be he would have loved to have been a forest ranger. Loved it, loved wildlife and nature and all that. He could tell you what plants you could eat on a nature walk and what you definitely shouldn't and don't use, as if you have to go to the bathroom in the woods. Don't use that leaf,
Wait,
Annie,
no.
but you can use
Right.
this leaf. But he said, I didn't follow my path. I didn't follow my passions, and I wish that I would have. And
Yeah.
that's what happens. Is you have to start listening to the whispers inside of you. There's a lot of things that happen if you don't. Physically, emotionally, I feel like for a while my soul felt broken. I don't know that souls can ever really break, but I
Mm,
can say that they can carry things with them
right.
and
Yeah.
fragments.
I think a couple different things too is that, like with your father and stuff and following the passion, I think that some of the stuff, again, not generalizing, observably, like my life and other people's lives I've seen, is I think that there's always or there can be sometimes these limitations. And I don't want to just oversimplify to say it's a limiting belief. Like I love woodworking and I like doing things around the house and interior design. For some reason, it just lights me up and it's fun. I don't know if I would do it for a career or not. It's not, but I love it. And but then there's something in my mind for me personally in my life structure. I'm like, I can't do that as a career. I can't. And you set these things in, and are they hobbies? Are they not? And I don't want to get lost here, but we confuse ourselves too with some of the things we like and passions and careers. But then we apply something like, does it fit in with the duties and the cogs and the gears and the pulleys that are gonna of my responsible duty of being on this planet as a provider? And again, not to get lost in that speech and then I think we're, even if there's listeners to it, so that's where it comes down to, is how do you find the passions and how do you seek the passions? And I was going to say one more thing too. There's those, I want this, and you're instantly saying I don't have it. So you're creating a polarization. And this is where it gets into some of the dualities of things. But they're so necessary. The things you talked about, where you felt like your soul was broken or unrepairable, or you're never going to crawl out of this place of forgetting and darkness, like that never ending cycle of darkness, those long nights of the soul and stuff. But you can't really see the light side of that without that other abstract. You can only see something with the silhouette if the light bounces off of it and the dark and the light. It's just like there's no observable position in that. So you have to experience that, and it sucks. But that's part of the reason, part of this corporeal world, is to experience it, have those experiential, palatable times. And they hurt and they suck, but they're glorious at the same time. And I think there's
100%.
some of that. And I was going to say, I think that there's some of it, if anything, like I'm just going to speak for myself. Again, don't want to ever generalize, but I think some of the balance is the recognition and the gratitude. And those are the art forms that should always be exercised. You should exercise those or work on those, because our minds are geared towards the survival. So there's 10 things that are said about Annie. 9 of them are a compliment. 1 of them is a really bad criticism. And you're going to go to bed thinking about the criticism, and that's going to seep in, and the 9 are going to, maybe you won't, maybe you've got this nailed down, but it's going to, and all the beauty of that, we overlook it sometimes too. And I think we can get lost in the non-observational. If we're already there, all the things we've achieved, and understanding we're so much further than we were a year ago. But then sometimes we feel like I'm nowhere, I'm not getting anywhere, I'm stuck in the sand, and I'm in a pit of mud. And if you were really to have retrospective, is two things. Is one is you're so much further than you were. The other is that you're living somebody's dream life, whatever version of that is. You're living somebody's dream life somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and to have those recognitions too. So I went off on a tangent on that, but I think coming back to some of that stuff, can you think of some like kind of steps or thoughts or processes or anything? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I would say that there's a couple of things is that writing down, so having an ability to see progress, and it could be a progress journal. A lot of times I think that having photographs of your life. I'm a visual person, so I like looking at pictures. I like listening to podcasts, past podcasts of myself, but then also like a journal, right? So writing down where you're at and what it is that you're looking for, and then some of the like comparing, what have I achieved? And so as you write down like the things that as I write down the things that I've achieved, and I'm able to look at it and compare and think about, holy shit, like I've really done a lot. Like this is really freaking
Yeah.
cool. And
Yeah.
so having that so as a comparison to see what it is that it's taken in order for you to get to where you're at right now, or where I'm at right now. So that's one thing. I would say also, if there's themes in your life that you're uncomfortable with or that you don't like. So for myself, I have found myself as a over functioning people pleaser in the workplace, and then in some of my relationships. I felt like I was always drained. I always
Are
was
you a
getting,
recovering people pleaser? Are
say
you there? Are you
now,
recovered?
I'm not fully recovered. No, I don't
No.
think it's ever there, but I would say that physically my body started just breaking down in various ways. I had skin problems. I had anxiety issues,
Probably
for
fatigue.
fertility issues,
Oh,
fatigue, headaches, all of that kind of stuff. Lots of stuff, lots and lots of stuff. Numbness in my hands.
yeah.
And so I have opened up a massive amount of space to listen to what my body needs. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
our bodies tell us more than we realize. And so our minds are the biggest freaking liars on the planet.
They are.
So
They
the
are.
lies that spew out of our brain
Yeah.
are
Our minds
ridiculous.
just want us to survive. They don't, it's not,
Yeah.
they're here to tell us that everything is bad because they don't want you to, they don't explore,
So
don't extend yourself. Your brain's going to keep you safe.
and so I have come to love that aspect of me, but I would say that the second piece being is like quieting myself enough to listen to me,
Yeah.
my body, and what my heart wants, not what this brain is telling me,
Yeah.
because it's a freaking lie. And then I think that the third thing is being honest about who I am and what it is that I'm interested in and the things that I like. I have attracted some of the coolest freaking people from around the world that I consider to be like my soul tribe. And so I've found people that I'm not really like a small talk person. Like I can do it, but I'm not into that. I'm into like, let's just vibe on a deep level. And not everyone is that way. I almost feel like an alien when I go out in public to be
Sure.
around
Sure.
other people. I'm like, oh, they're talking about the Kardashians. Like,
Yeah.
not into that. Not into that at
Right.
all. Or like Starbucks or whatever. Like that stuff is just not interesting to me. But what the point of that is that finding a group of people is helpful. You can have access to these people as much or as little as you want. I'm an introvert. Not a super introverted person. Like I'm not shy. I just don't want a lot of people around me necessarily because I take on that energy. But I love having these like elevated, high vibe, higher consciousness conversations where am I going to be tired afterwards? Yeah, a little bit, but like I'm going
Mhm.
to be alive.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
when you come out of the
And
closet of
present. This is a very present
Ugh,
types of experiences. Like I'm so in tune right now.
yes.
That's what you do. You feel alive.
So those three things I would say are the things that are key for
Yeah.
someone to find that level of fulfillment, because when you're out of the fake closet and you are in the real life and you're in the present moment and the future moments that you want to become, you're going to
Yeah.
start bringing in opportunities of, oh yeah, I want to do that, I want to do that, I want to do that, I want more of that, give me
Yeah.
more of that, I want to
So
learn.
those three are the journaling.
Yeah, like meditation
Oh,
or
meditation. Thank
mindfulness,
you.
so listening to ourselves, listening to our body, and the
Is the
third
third?
is then
community or?
finding your community, finding your
Okay.
vibe, and being out with who you actually are. So, like, surrounding yourself with the people that get you and are committed to wanting to see you
So
expand yourself.
I want to add one thing to community, which is a very interesting. I
Yeah.
don't even know if it's interesting. So I think that it can be not traps. Sometimes it's hard to put the words that you want, that you're feeling. But here, I'm just going to say this. I think it can be easy to fall into ruts of negativity with community, because even if they're a high vibe person, sometimes it's easy to just vent to them because I want to get rid of it. Be like, hey, like this is a growth thing. I want to just shed off all this icky, sticky, prickly stuff. Let's talk about it. And when that's some of the journey, the spiritual journey can actually be a very daunting, heavy, tiresome. You get fatigued and things like that. I've gotten healing fatigued. I'm like, oh my God, I'm just sick of peeling back the onion so many times. But what can happen too is you can find, depending on your community or a spouse, you just come home and you're just dumping all your baggage to try to get rid of it.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you find yourself, you could month later, whatever time is irrelevant, but I'm just saying like a month later, you're all of a sudden you find yourself, you're like, I'm only coming to them just to complain about my day and shut off all my garbage. And then I'm like, oh, wow, I've just turned this into kind of this. Now, when I
Dumping
see this
ground.
person, all I do is just share my gooey, icky stuff just to get rid of it. And I'm like, that's not fair to them. It's not fair to me. And it can easily get developed. And that's the only reason I said the community, because it's not a word of warning, but I think it's just be aware of some of that stuff too. Because when you do
100%.
find somebody, when you find somebody who's a soul tribe, I think it's easy to share. You want to share with them and you want to be like, we worked through this and we worked through that and we got rid of this. And this is this observational point. But then I think you can get into that not trap, but again, you can get into that vibe of, hey, we're healing, but we're just sharing bad stuff. So I'll end it there because I don't want to continue to beat that drum. I think that's just one of those warnings. But it's not always about the butterflies, rainbows, unicorns, puffy little bunny tails or whatever. It's not all about that either. It is about the gritty stuff. It is about the observational stuff. But I think too, as a good friend or stewardship of relationships, I'm just going to throw in, always do your best to come in with the supportive, positive side and the other side, and the gratitude and the recognitions on the backside. I think you can share, but let's, as a community, always try to end on that higher level to walk away, if that's fair.
100%. And I do want to comment on that. Yes, all of us have things that we need to dump and get rid of. But that's where I do think that having clear visions of the feeling that you want to have, I don't always even say like the
Beautiful. Yep.
vision, but the feeling that you want to have on the other side of it has to be that of progress.
Yeah.
And progress doesn't come when we live in woe is me land. And so
Correct.
I think that with the right group, you have the option to unload some things and then it's time to move forward, right? Because I do agree with you on the like whole healing path. It's just after a while there's so many self-help books and healing this and healing that. Is that the ego that we're now attaching ourselves to is
Or are we drawing more brokenness in some cases too?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is an addiction to that
Yeah.
sort of piece of it as well because it keeps us in healing mode
Yep.
versus the
And the healing
next
one, you're in always constantly you're in recognition phase where you're recognizing the broken patterns and all those things. It
100%.
drives yourself
Yeah.
nuts.
Whole other conversation.
It is. It is. It is.
But I would say that I am 100% with you on that, and that there has to be, when you do have a good group of people together around you, just an awareness of, hey, like, I'm still a high performer in my
Mhm.
life. I'm just choosing to do different things. And I
Yeah.
have a spiritual,
The
mindful
redirection of your
practice.
superpowers. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I would say too is that the feeling thing is a real powerful thing, even in the meditation too, even in
Mm.
that second one, or probably even in the journaling too. Those those true emotional states. What does it feel like? Taste, smell, all those
Mhm.
whatever version of that is. If it's a trip to Bali, you can feel the air and you can smell and you just whatever that thing is that you're imagining. So
Hell yeah.
the emotion is so strong in all three of those things you brought up. So
Mhm.
basically, I think that's a very reinforcement underpinning aspect of them all.
Thank you.
Yeah. So perfect. Where can people find you and
Yeah.
reach out.
First of all, this has been an amazing conversation. You and I feel could just
We
talk
could
for a
keep this.
long
This could
time.
be,
Yeah, there's
yeah, we could
so
double
many
this
paths,
conversation.
but I applaud your restraint, and we're headed we're headed to the end of this conversation. So thank you. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at our_luminous_life. And then also my podcast, which is Luminous Life podcast. DMs are open. And yeah, I would love to invite
Beautiful.
someone over, but thank you
You're
for
on all the
that.
platforms, right? Apple, Spotify, all the
Yeah.
everything. Yep.
I'm not on YouTube.
Oh, check out our Instagram.
Thank you. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Thanks again, Annie. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.